All right, you can find this article at foodworldorder.com, another one of his websites. James Evan Pilato finishing things off with us this hour of the program. Then next hour, we'll get into the HIV/AIDS fraud a little bit, about the new drug that they're talking about. We'll talk about all that in just a moment. Major grocer Albertsons getting rid of self-checkout lanes, and I know that this is interesting to both of us. James, what's your take on it?
I found it interesting as just we were referencing on the break there that the grocery store that I work for, we don't have any of these self-checkout lanes, I believe, at any of our 10 locations. But what the article does, kind of mention, one, they say, we want more human contact. And people do crave human contact. I think sometimes that's what's tough about, running into, the crazy people out on the streets of Portland is that so many times it's like they need human contact on some level. But the other thing within the article also kind of mentions, Wilcox spokeswoman said the replacement of automated checkout lanes with human-operated lanes would likely mean more hours available for employees to work. So in our Great Recession, that part is an interesting angle. But one of the guys who works for NCR Corp., who's one of the leaders in making these sort of self-checkout machinery, he says he's not really worried about some grocery stores dumping it because ultimately it's not just about grocery stores and that other places have these kinds of things. I think in grocery stores, a lot of times, people do crave human contact and you like to chit-chat and talk and meet folks. And at least that's, I think, the kind of atmosphere, at least that I'm lucky enough to work in. And maybe not everybody really wants that. But if you don't want to talk, you don't have to. You're not forced to. It's just there and the opportunity is there with, a friendly person trying to help you out. The one time I can say that I have enjoyed, if that's the word, the self-checkout lane was, don't tell anybody, but we went to IKEA once because there was something very specific, that we needed that would fit perfectly. In an apartment, you don't have tons of space to work with, so you sometimes have to be really specific about what you can use and get. But we were able to, look online, see the thing we needed, see where it was located in our Portland, Oregon IKEA, go there, pick it up in the aisle, B7, roll to the self-checker, and be out the door. And ultimately, was probably in the building, all of 6 minutes. So for something like that, it's like, oh, good God, let's just get in and out as quickly as we can. And I think that's what this guy who works for NCR kind of says, people appreciate having the choice of it being there. What's your
I
side?
like it. I think it's convenient, but it comes. What comes to mind is the idea that machines are taking the place of jobs. And when we're talking about jobs, the unemployment rates, the real unemployment rates,
Uh-huh.
not the ones they say officially, are through the roof. I was hearing a statistic the other day about unemployment for veterans specifically. Unemployment for veterans is well over 20%. And that's what the official, so-called
Uh-huh.
official, I'm doing air quotes, so-called official numbers are, okay? So I know they're higher than that. We can assume that they're 5, 6, 7% higher than that. And that would be a great job for a veteran who's maybe on disabilities or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot and can't get a job to work at a grocery store. And I don't think it's about jobs. At the end of the day, I think it's about control of our debt-based, slavery-based system. And it has little to do with the jobs. I think we just have to give the useless eaters these low-level jobs at a grocery store so that they're able to reciprocate and actually buy what the grocery store is selling in the first place. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. You need the cogs to help kind of run the machine in a way that, are smart enough to know how to push a couple buttons, but not smart enough to question why all this is going on in the first place.
Exactly. So I think it's interesting, and
Mm-hmm.
it's another example of technology, and it's making human labor obsolete.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and still, this is the theme throughout this conversation is ultimately, you know, things that we can do and vote with our dollar and things that we're involved with. And music and food are pretty much, two of those main things that I would wager everybody out there has enjoyed both of those things today, and you will tonight, and you will tomorrow. So, yeah, it's pretty fundamental.
It's basic stuff. All right, James. Any other stories that we needed to get to?
You know, man, there are so many things, and I wish there were more time to go into all the different areas. There's an interesting article on holyhexes.com. FBI invites controversial Westboro Baptist to counter terror program. So why would Homeland Security want to invite the, thank God for dead soldiers, protesters and the Phelps? This whole kind of homegrown terrorism and the culture wars and all this kind of, it's a fascinating kind of thing. And we see, false flag infiltrations and all kinds of black ops going on in our daily life, whether that's, the churches or the banks or the schools on any number of levels. I would also maybe point folks to what I've tend to use more and more because it's just kind of faster and easier, and I guess as things accelerate, it becomes that much more useful. Is my Twitter feed on, it's at Media Monarchy, and there are things that I post and tweet there, and I try even use it as an outreach because there's tons of celebrities on there, so you can ask Joe Rogan or Morgan Spurlock or any of the other number of folks who are on there. Alec Baldwin had some tweet the other day about, and all this talk, about the economy, why isn't anyone talking about the wars? It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and did you hear about Lindsay Lohan being paid to tweet something
about
about the Federal Reserve? Yeah.
Yep.
And another example of that, real quick, I may have brought this up with you before, is when we confronted Penn and Teller about 9/11, and then he goes on his Twitter account with millions of people following him and starts talking about Building 7, making tweets about Building 7, Building 7. I was like, great. That took the video that already went viral that we released on YouTube and even brought more attention to people beyond just the choir of folks that were rooting me on in the 9/11 truth movement, or so-called truth movement.
So, again, there are a lot of different things going on the different sites that I have, but, of course, the flagship site is mediamonarchy.com, and on there you will find links to all the other related sites and media and shows, and whether that's on Facebook or YouTube or whatever new, bell and whistle thing everybody's on. If that's the most populated digital town square, then that's where we're going to go to keep waging an information war.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but we have to do it. I recently went over to Facebook.
Welcome aboard to the CIA-funded intel gather.
Yeah, right. I'm like, geez, and of course they put that facial recognition stuff on there, and I learned how to opt out to that, and I'm reluctant to go on Twitter and whatnot, and geez, but we have to do it. We have to suck up our pride and just go at this full throttle, and that's what you do with your site, MediaMonarchy.com, and you also are known for the podcast you do, or the vlogcast, the YouTube, whatever you want to call it, with James Corbett. And real quick, what was the name of that one?
NewWorldNextWeek.com. The 80th episode will be published tomorrow, where we talk about the grocery stores, and we talk about 9/11 alleged hijackers, and we talk about Netflix and so much more.
Wow, that sounds like a great show, and I'll have to check that out. And it's always great to have you on the Bob Tuskin Show. We have you on first Wednesday of every month. Thanks again, James.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. Bye. All right, there he goes, folks. Always great.